Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. Tonight, I'm joined by one of my fellow coworkers, Trevor Kathol. Trevor, A&M grad, so we had to bring him on here as Oklahoma State's playing A&M here in some bowl game. Texas Act, Tax Act, something. And of course, we've got returning, as always here, Jay, talk some more college football. Talk about the college football playoff rankings here to start out with, and then we'll get into the Heisman Trophy race, as well as OU and OSU bowl game predictions too. But to start out with, I guess, the one thing I didn't think would happen this weekend is that Florida State would win by more than a touchdown and then still be left out of the college football playoff rankings. I just didn't see that coming. I saw maybe, you know what, they win a close one. It's a nail biter. You know what, they wouldn't pull it off. But Jay, I'll ask you here first. What'd you think? Do you think one, do you think the committee got it right? And two, do you think Florida State deserved its shot to be in there?
See, this is the worst case scenario for any committee, honestly. You have Georgia lose, and then you have everybody else that you don't want went out. So as soon as I saw Texas in, I knew either Florida State or Georgia was going to be out, and it happens to be both, which I myself, I was like, I don't think Texas deserved to be in the first place. But I think FSU and Georgia both equally got screwed, in my opinion.
Well, why do you think Georgia got screwed? They ended up winning. Yeah, they won 12 games, but they ended up losing the most important one of their season.
Most important. But that's like saying, I mean, it's hard to describe it because Alabama lost to Texas, right? Texas and Alabama are in. Texas lost to OU. The only team that Georgia loses to is Alabama, who is also a one-loss team. Texas is a one-loss team, and they're both in over that team that had a 29 win streak. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then you have FSU, who goes undefeated this season, and your quarterback breaks his leg, and you sit there and you tell me that one player is determinant of a whole football team. That means he just should be Heisman, in my opinion, at that point, if that's how you view that player.
Well, I mean, Trevor, anything to say in the contrary here?
I can't say too much contrarily. My top four would have been Texas would have been in my top four, having that win over Alabama. But I agree. Florida State kind of into the point of what else can they do to earn a spot in the college football playoff? The college football playoff, they talk about the best teams, the four best. Well, if it's the four best, where's Georgia? Where's Ohio State? Like, those teams are arguably four of the best in the country, and not knocking anyone in the playoff. But if it's the four best, those teams should be right there having that conversation. And if it's the four most deserving, Florida State has to be in. In my opinion, as an SEC guy, I've been around it. The SEC didn't earn a spot in the 14 playoff.
But is that more because they cannibalized themselves? I mean, here would be my thing: is in the future, why in the world, if I'm Texas, would I schedule Alabama and vice versa in the non-con? Like, there is no, and I'm great. We're going to a 12-team playoff next year. It really doesn't make sense anyways. None of this will matter. But if I'm Florida State, why did I open up the season playing against number 5 at the time, LSU, who also finished 13th in the country? So why in the world would you schedule these games that are non-conference, that supposedly matter? Granted, you know what? Jordan Travis says, I last week thought was Travis Hunter, but still, Jordan Travis, he gets knocked out, and Florida State wins 2 more games. I would understand it a little bit more if, for example, Jordan Travis scored the only touchdown in the ACC championship game and they won by 1. I'd be a little bit more with the committee then. Well, Florida State proved they can go and win their entire conference championship, and they can also win the last game of their season before then with backup quarterbacks. I mean, they had their second string play, and then they had their third string play against Louisville and still won. It wasn't pretty, but is that what matters? I mean, if Florida State had won by 20 instead of just 10, you think we're all saying something different here? Do you think we're all saying Alabama still is in? Or is it more just how they won wasn't the greatest way ever? Because I got to say, if Cardale Jones comes in for Ohio State and blows out whoever, granted that was 2014 before the college football playoff, et cetera, we're in a different aspect now. But if that happens, then we're all like, oh, okay, Ohio State deserves a shot. They should still be in there. Whereas, okay, you know what, you have a backup quarterback throw for 55 yards, doesn't look great. So is this now just for a TV ratings aspect? That's what it comes off to me as, at least. It's like, okay, you just want more blue bloods in there. You're going to draw more eyes, and everyone just is so 65-7 Georgia versus TCU. They don't want to see that again. I mean, Jay, I'll ask you.
I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, all colleges are businesses at this point. You have the NIL deals, you have the money aspect. Coaches are being paid $78 million. It's at the end of the day, you got to make your money. Is Florida State going to bring you in a ton of money if they get blown out by 60, or is it just going to, like you said, another repeat of TCU or the OU, LSU, or the Georgia? And, you have so many prior years of getting teams blown out. Are you simply just making it to where it's going to be close games no matter what? And I think that's why they put Alabama and Texas on opposite sides, because in my opinion, looking at the bracket, I think that's who's going to make it to championship.
Yeah, Trevor, do you think the committee just should have had Florida State at 5 last week instead of having Oregon there? And they just really should have put Alabama, I don't know, at number 4, if they were really going to be that good and by winning they were going to be in? Or do you think that really this is just circumstantial?
I think, honestly, if winning your conference championship doesn't matter to getting you into the college football playoff, why not set the college football playoff last week? So in a sense, put them at 5 and tell them they have to beat the snot out of Louisville and win by 3, 4, 5 touchdowns in order to get into the college football playoff. They didn't do that. They put them at 3. They were in a spot where theoretically in any other sport, you're controlling your own destiny, win and you're in. And here they won still by 2 touchdowns or by 2 possessions, and they are being punished for it. In my eyes, that's just, it's harmful to the sport that we all love. It's not good for us moving forward.
I just think this really is going to be we have a revenge game and win, and have every right to do so. I don't know how you drop from 1 to 6 when you only lost 1 game against Alabama on neutral side.
And then the championship game, which is so wild. I
mean, last year, this is the other thing. There's not like a formula. We can't go off of a formula. One of the podcasts I listened to, the Ryan Rosillo podcast, they went on about how, okay, people can't look at history because this thing's not even been around 10 years. So like, what history are you going off of? Because that was my main thing going into this weekend, is an undefeated Power 5 team's never been left out. But now we got that first going for us. And next year won't matter. But I'm not going to pick Florida State to win against Georgia. I just am shocked that last year you have a TCU team not win anything. They didn't win the Big 12. They lost to K-State in the championship game. And they also didn't win anything necessarily besides a semifinal game. So are we going to see a semifinal banner hanging over TCU Stadium? I don't think so. Probably not. But they can lose in the championship game last year, but Georgia can't. That's the larger point here. But Trevor, I'll ask you, of the 4, which one do you like the most? You think this is Alabama's to lose? You think this is Michigan's to lose? Or you think Texas and Washington could come out of here? You're the one non-Oklahoman and non-Big 12 fan here, so I got to ask. You were a former Big 12 fan in Nebraska and A&M, but you're not a current Big 12 fan, so I got to ask you here. Where do your loyalties lie? Where do you think it happens?
I mean, it comes down to quarterback play. If they've got a shot because of their defense.
2 turnovers at OU. I think he's in. I really do. But at the end of the day, I think, like he said, it's going to be 160 points together, and it's going to be a big show of who can put up more points. So at the end of the day, I'll choose Texas.
Well, the one thing I think is fascinating about this game is that both of these quarterbacks, Ewers and Penix Jr., are both guys where if they were drafted in the NFL tomorrow, the biggest question would be injuries. Like Quinn Ewers just getting knocked around by Oklahoma State guys, which all due respect, I love the school I went to, but he's going to face different types of guys in the SEC next year. So if he does decide to come back, which we'll get to in a minute, but I like Texas a lot too. I think they're going to play a little bit better defense than the Pac-12 is used to. There's those shootouts just might not ring the same. But then again, Texas had so many games where tell me that this Oklahoma State game this weekend wouldn't have gone a little bit differently if we didn't have like Ollie Gordon fully healthy and other things here just working for Oklahoma State overall. Like any starting wide receiver start the season was in the game. On the other hand, Oklahoma State, we lost 49-21. It's not like I'm making this as like, oh, we were only missing a couple guys and a couple guys away. We're happy to be there. That's for sure. I'm just going to take Texas. I don't necessarily really know why, besides it just is a gut feeling. And I think Washington, honestly, after watching this past weekend, they're not putting up a lot of points when they do face a good defense. When they do face an Oregon State, when they do face an Oregon, they're not putting up a ton of points. And overall, the match predictor from ESPN really favors Texas, which if that's where the public is on, it's probably the wrong side of the line to be on. But at the end of the day, like that's what I'm going to choose too. I mean, yours is really good, and their margin of victory that Texas has over the whole season is really good as well. And Washington's margin of victory, like they're squeaking out basically every game. They beat USC by 10. You know, I mean, and that's the biggest margin of victory they have in any recent history, basically. I mean, that's a month ago today. So I like Texas a little bit better, and it does pain me to say that, though. I'm not rooting for them necessarily. I'm rooting for the Big 12, but also they're not Big 12 anymore, so it doesn't matter. All right, well, Trevor, I'll ping it around back to you here. Alabama versus Michigan. What kind of game are we in for here first? I'll ask you. You think it's high scoring or is it a low scoring affair? Can Michigan let up? Is Michigan going to even give up a point?
I mean, that's Michigan's path to victory. If they get in a shootout, they are not winning that game. If it's a 35-30 game, Michigan's on the low end of that. If it's 28-20, Michigan's on the low end of that. I think JJ McCarthy, and I don't know if it's an injury thing or exactly what it is, he's not played basically since the Penn State game. He hasn't played at the level of the Heisman candidate first round draft pick that people were talking about him being early in the season. That being said, if Michigan can control the ball and turn and hand the ball off and run the ball for 5, 6, 7 yards of carry, take 8 minutes of drive, score, and then get one stop somewhere along the game, that's Michigan's path to victory. This is going to be a hard-nosed, blue-blood, old-school football fight.
I'll tell you what, if anyone had the Iowa under this past weekend of 6.5 points, they made out, but that entire time you've got to be just sweating it off going, man, please don't get a good punt return going back or something. Because even then they could have scored two field goals like the Chargers did on Sunday and still scored points and still had the under there. But of course they lost 26-0. I mean, Jay, do you see this playing out? You know, Alabama scores a lot, or we see some JJ McCarthy. Oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda been a Heisman because they're using him a little differently.
So here's the thing. You know, we saw what 6 passes against Ohio State by JJ McCarthy.
Eight, I think, to be exact. Yeah.
Like,
didn't hit double digits. Yeah.
Here's the thing. We're not going to see the gunslinger JJ McCarthy. We're going to see what Michigan do running the ball over and over and over and over again, like they have been the past 13 games. I won't be surprised if they, bring a new I formation out. I just don't see them, a quarterback battle. I'll see one defense playing the run good and one defense playing it, decent. So at the end of the day, 14-3 Alabama.
Oh, okay. Alabama. All right. By 11. All right. Trevor, what about you? Who you got?
It's tough. It's really tough because Jay's right. I mean, you get into a spot where I mean, maybe if you just lean on them and you can hold them to 3 or 6 points, eventually Blake Corum's going to run one off. And that's going to be the difference in the game. Can Michigan do that? I don't know that they've been tested enough to do that. But my gut is telling me that Michigan's going to win. I'm going to say it's going to be a 9-7 game. It's going to be a miserable. It is going to be a Big Ten West game where it is run the ball. There's 4 or 5 turnovers, punts. A big punt return is the difference. Something like that. I do think Michigan's gonna take that game though.
All right. Well, I'll give you guys my 2 cents. But I first off want to start with the quiz question here. Who do you think threw for more passing yards this year? Jalen Milroe or JJ McCarthy? Whoever thinks they got it first, go for it. Because it definitely is it's close. I'll say it that way. It's very close.
That's crazy if it's close. Then I'm.
It's 100. It's less than 100 yards. Less than 100 yards.
Yeah,
difference.
If you're quizzing us, I feel like it's JJ McCarthy just because you want to throw that little wrench in there.
No, it's Jalen Milroe, 2,718 yards to JJ McCarthy's 2,630. Here's the real question here: who threw the ball more, JJ or Jalen Milroe? And granted, and by the way, that Penn State game is where JJ threw 8 times and they still won. The Ohio State game, he threw it 20 times and they still won. But still, 20 in this day and age college football is pretty crazy. Yeah. So who you got here? Who do you think threw the ball more, JJ or Jalen?
I mean, if you're counting the early games and everybody's talking about Heisman, it's probably JJ. Yeah.
And it is. He threw the ball 287 times. He had 213 completions on the season versus Jalen Milroe's 261 attempts and 171 completions. What's interesting to me here is that the rushing yards is all very, very similar, except for Blake Corum is the guy who literally scores on the team. It's not even funny. He has 24 touchdowns on the season. I like Alabama to pull this one out, but that's purely because Jim Harbaugh just not really having it all set and put together here. Last year, the biggest thing that I realized was that TCU should not have beat Michigan. And I think all recently, now that we know that the whole sign stealing schemes and all type of stuff, where TCU knew Michigan was going to react a certain way if they put up these certain signs, and they did other stuff on opposite. And you go back and watch that game, just the highlights, and you're like, oh, this Michigan defender's playing really far off the ball or really close to the ball. And it's going the opposite way. So clearly to me, that's something that Michigan should have adjusted at halftime. They should have said, let's just play them straight up then. Why not play them straight up? We should be better. And they should have won. But then again, when in doubt, you choose Saban. That's kind of like the motto, right? Bill Belichick has proven the motto may not be correct anymore, but the motto has always been you choose the coach, you choose the guy you trust a little bit more. When it comes down to the Final Four of college basketball, I'm going to choose, Mike Krzyzewski over Coach Cal every day of the week, even if Coach Cal's got 5 first-round picks. So that's kind of where I go at the end of the day here is I think it'll be Alabama, but I think a lot of that could be is Jalen Milroe just showing out and JJ McCarthy not being the guy. I think Jalen Milroe has only gotten better this whole entire season, especially after he was sat. And that's what's also crazy to me here about reading the stats here. It's he didn't play a game. JJ McCarthy played every game. Jalen Milroe still threw the ball for more yards. So with all that being said here, now we got to talk some Heisman. Heisman odds here. Who do you guys think's going to win the Heisman versus who do you guys think should win the Heisman? Trevor, I'll ask you first.
My prediction is Jaden Daniels, LSU quarterback. We talked about history when looking at the college football playoff. If you look at history, there's not many quarterbacks that run for 1,500 yards and pass for 3,000 that don't win the Heisman. In fact, I think it's one, and it was the same year Lamar Jackson won or something like that. Where 2 players did it and one missed out. That being said, I think Michael Penix has done plenty as the quarterback of Washington, he would earn my vote. The calm, cool, collected, full season of action showed, I'm sure, a lot of NFL teams that need a quarterback or might be interested in someone like him, that he can be that guy and he can be down 2 touchdowns and stay calm and stay in the pocket, take the hits and move them downfield. So he would have my vote, but I do think Jaden Daniels will win the Heisman.
All right, Jay, what about you?
I think Penix will win. If he gets a win against Texas, I think he will win. At the end of the day, he's done well. I mean, the odds aren't really in his favor, but I think Jaden Daniels, the only underlying fact is that he threw most of his yards against under 500 teams, ran most of his yards under 500 teams. When he played against a decent SEC team, his numbers were a little bit lackluster at the end of the day. I mean, I just don't see, Jaden Daniels has, the plus 1600 on Las Vegas, but I think after, they really look into it, I don't think he'll win. Who I want to win, I think the 6-year veteran Bo Nix, kind of, his off-sending Heisman glory win is the only thing he brings to the table.
I mean, I love the Bo Nix story, as I've alluded to before, and I want to tell everyone he's not 28. It's been thrown around. He's 28. He's 23. I mean, he's not my age, but he's also not. He's not the youngest guy ever. I mean, we all know that. But he's going to play in Oregon's bowl game. He's got a chance to really raise his stock there for quarterback draft rankings. But the Heisman Trophy will be awarded this Saturday, the 9th. And we'll see who wins. So as far as the bowl games go into it, like what could have, should I think Bo Nix, if Bo Nix was going to win the Heisman, I don't think he plays in the bowl game, honestly. And if I'm Jaden McDaniels, why play in the bowl game at this point? You're going to win the Heisman. You can only hurt your draft odds probably after winning the Heisman. Just go train for the combine. Got to Huntington Beach or Manhattan Beach, wherever in California, and just go literally hang out, hit the beach, and train for the Heisman. Basically train for get drafted higher. Looking back on it, I think Jaden McDaniels will win just because a lot of the odds are in his favor currently from Vegas, and we're less than a week out. And also, he didn't play this last weekend. So we're not reminded, oh, wait a second, here's how he plays in big games under the spotlight. It's all, oh, here's his highlight film. Because if Bo Nix doesn't play this past weekend, are all of a sudden all three of us going, well, maybe, or Michael Penix Jr., well, maybe. And I think there's a chance we're saying that. Probably not, just because the stats really aren't there. And like Bo Nix didn't have to play to end some games. I mean, they thumped Colorado so good that Bo Nix probably just said, was like, hey, I don't even play the second half. Whereas now that comes back to hurt him, because it's like, all right, crap. Like, he doesn't have the stats to go with Jay McDaniels, but also that goes to show you how valuable they are to each team. If you need McDaniels to play the entire game and you do need the Heisman Trophy thing, that's great. And Trevor, I love the stat of that amount of yards rushing and throwing is insane for a quarterback to not win the Heisman. I just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's all the time that I watch basically OU quarterbacks be undefeated and then win the Heisman that I go, okay, you know what? Undefeated, just win the Heisman. Like Robert Griffin III won the Heisman in 2011. Was he an insanely good quarterback? Of course. Did he play insanely good against Oklahoma State? No, but I also have a very in-depth knowledge about that one matchup, right? Like Kyler Murray deserved the Heisman in 2018. I'll give everyone credit. Kyler and Baker, they thumped Oklahoma State. You know what? They were undefeated seasons until they got to the playoff. They deserved it. I'm fully there with it. And as much more I make fun of myself, my college football knowledge, like, I mean, when I look back through like the college football rankings, and lists and stuff, I love the story of when Matt Leinart won it in 2004, and then, then 2005, technically speaking, like New Year's Day, or right after, you have the BCS National Championship, Florida and USC and Texas. And basically you have Vince Young at the Heisman Trophy ceremony going, you might win this one, but you're not going to win the national championship. To Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart. And then he went out and prove it. I just would love to see the Heisman Trophy winner actually be the guy we also see on the national spotlight a couple weeks later playing for something. And that's why I would love for Michael Penix to win it. I mean, you're undefeated in the regular season, clearly mean a ton to the team. When you're not playing and you're banged up, it's not even close. And I like Bo Nix a lot. I think he could be deserving of it and should go to the ceremony, but also, and I think there's a lot of other guys who could go to the ceremony too and be putting up, similar types of numbers. I mean, would Louisville be anywhere where they are today? They've got 10 wins on the season. They've got 3 losses. Granted, Jake Plummer is not the same guy as James McDaniels, but like, who's more valuable? It's just one of those things where, okay, you got 3 losses. Like, where does the line get drawn? If Oklahoma State beat Texas past week and only Gordon rushes for 200 yards, or all of a sudden all 3 of us at least saying, oh, you know what, Calvin's got a point? Probably not, to be honest, because Ollie Gordon didn't play great in every single game, and somehow Oklahoma State lost to UCF and University of South Alabama. But still, at the same point here, just bringing that up of like, I would rather for be Penix Jr. Versus Jay McDaniels, but I do think Jay McDaniels probably does win it at the end of the day. All right, well, the other question I have here is from a Heisman Trophy guy who was at least in contention earlier in the season, but then gets knocked up, gets banged up a little bit. And Jay, like you said earlier, throws a couple interceptions in the Red River rivalry game and is knocked out. But this was a popular question amongst Oklahoma State fans and basically Big 12 fans as well. Does Quinn Ewers come back next year? After seeing Malik Murphy as well as Arch Manning on the sideline for Texas, they've got a 4-star and 5-star respectively going into SEC play. Why? I know why Ewers would come back. Raise his draft stock a little bit, look really good against SEC opponents. But should he come back is my main question.
Oh, absolutely. I think he thrives under the Texas offense. But that does put strain on, your future quarterbacks like Arch Manning, a 5-star recruit, big name. You have the publicity, the money from the Manning family. You're looking at, if he stays, that transfer portal is going to open up for Arch. But at the end of the day, I think he leaves if he wins the national championship, but I think he stays if he loses.
Yeah.
Trevor, what do you think?
He's QB3 this year, which could be the 3rd overall pick you're still getting paid a lot of money. If you're the 3rd quarterback drafted, you probably have a little less expectation on you. But I think he comes back regardless. I think the Heisman's on his mind. He's one of those players that I think he was number 2 in his draft class or in his recruiting class overall, number 1 quarterback. He's one of those guys that's a blue chip prospect, whether he balls out in the national championship and wins it or comes back for a year. But I think there's a lot that he can improve on, especially kind of, we mentioned it earlier, his injuries. Like, if he can stay healthy, that help for a full season, that helps your draft stock immensely versus like this year, you go into it, maybe people have a little bit of worry about your shoulder that you hurt in the Big 12 championship game, or, the countless injuries he's had over the last couple of years. But then to both of your points, I think there's a chance that both of, Arch Manning and Malik Murphy transfer if he comes back, because Murphy showed that he is more than capable running in a high-level offense for a Power 5 school. Arch Manning is Arch Manning. So the expectations are, if you're talking expectations, nobody has higher expectations than he does.
I mean, the one question that makes me think about this Quinn Ewers deal is that I don't think he should come back. I think he should go pro tomorrow, or right after the season's over, no matter what. Almost unless he just has the worst ever college football playoff showing, because Malik Murphy's a 6'5", 238-pound guy who is, just a massive dude who looks like he could take a hit much better than Ewers. And Ewers has been just knocked around, it seems like, every single year in the Big 12. And Big 12 guys are just not as physical, not as big on the line as SEC guys, from what we all know. Jay, I mean, are you going to tell me that KU is running out there with 300-pound defensive linemen that are in the same boat as Kentucky?
I understand, but if you look at the Big 12 and SEC matchups the past 2 years, I mean, Texas beat Alabama.
True. Oh yeah. No, I mean, and yours won that.
And yours won that game. I'm saying, I mean, Big 12 does stack up. Big 12 and SEC are the places to be in college football and college basketball, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm not going to disagree with. I think the Big 12, definitely in basketball. I think Big 12 owns college basketball, but in college football, I don't know. If I'm yours, I feel like you could lose your starting job next year if you get banged up in a game. Blake Murphy comes in and Texas never looks back. That would be the worst case scenario for him, and I think that's in the cards. I don't think that's out of the question. Whereas you go to the NFL,
Spencer Rattler though.
Yeah, then you're Spencer Rattler,
where you're the number one overall pick for 6 weeks, and then Caleb Williams steps in, leads them to a college football playoff berth, and you're transferring to South Carolina, hoping to scratch your, just to hope to get
6 and 7 on the year.
So I mean, if you're Quinn Ewers, do you want to be Spencer Rattler?
I think he's much more talented than Spencer Rattler. Nothing against Spencer Rattler. I think he was a great quarterback under Lincoln Riley's scheme. He played decent until prospect number one of all time, Caleb Williams, comes in and shows why he's number one for a reason. But he was a decent quarterback for when we had him for the 1.5 year that we did. But to see him not have that same success over in South Carolina just really shows. It really shows.
Yeah,
the difference in talent.
Well, do you think there's if you're Quinn Ewers, do you make a business decision and leave now and get basically, because you're only risking coming back, I would say. You can definitely improve your odds. You're risking the good and bad of it for sure. But I would tell Quinn Ewers and tell his entire, posse, hey, go make some more money. You made at least $1 million being an Ohio State quarterback. You definitely made more than $1 million and you're driving around Aston Martin at Austin. Go get some NFL type of money. Be a 5th round, 4th round, maybe 3rd round pick. Who knows? I mean, if he plays good enough, if he plays good enough, he could be a 1st rounder. I mean, it's quite possible, but I don't know that many quarterbacks that are going to be drafted after pick number 15 this year. But maybe yours doesn't even need to wait that long. Maybe we'll hear his name instead of Tennessee or whatever pick. I just don't. I mean, he's not going to get drafted over Caleb Williams and Drake May would be my thing, right? He's just not. So then, where do you have that?
You also have to battle Bo Nix,
Yeah.
You have to think about him, and then Jaden Daniels.
The big thing there, though, from an NFL standpoint, though, you're looking at a 21-year-old versus a 20. Bo Nix 23. I think Jaden Daniels is there 23, 24 too. Do you lean? Yeah, I mean, I think that younger quarterback, like Joe Burrow, to me is the exception, not the rule. He is the old quarterback leaving, but he also has one of the most accurate balls across all 3 levels of the field that we've ever seen, or close to it anyway.
Well, this brings me to just a more fun question. Oklahoma State and OU will more than likely have different quarterbacks next year. I think Alan Bowman can try to apply for eligibility to come back, but let's say he doesn't come back. And let's also say, as we know right now, Dylan Gabriel's not coming back. I think the consensus answer, and Jay, I don't think you're going to dispute this. I think Jackson Arnold's starting next year, right? I mean, that's just set in stone. But as far as Dylan Gabriel, where does he go? Where's he going to transfer to? Is he going to follow Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State? Is that the thing?
And so he entered the draft portal. He's just weighing his options. He talked about going to the NFL. He can stay one more year here in OU. There is that possibility. But do I want him one more year without Lebby? Because him and Lebby have been playing since UCF way back when. So all I'm saying is I think Jackson Arnold will start next year. He showed, the 17-17 game he against what team? I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But he led let us down the field, and we put in 7 points and won the game. He really showed, for a young quarterback, some poise, and there's a reason why he was the number one dual threat quarterback coming out of his class. So I think Dylan Gabriel either follows Levy or goes to the draft.
All right, Trevor, I don't know how locked in you are on OU football transfer portal rankings since you're a Nebraska fan who also is a A&M grad as well. Getting the grad degree there. But any reports here on it? Should Gabriel transfer to Nebraska? Should that be his next landing spot? Or A&M?
I hope not for Nebraska, but I mean Nebraska is in a little different spot than like Oklahoma or someplace that would be looking for a fifth-year starting quarterback. I mean Nebraska right now, in my opinion, is 2 or 3 years away from being competitive even in the Big Ten, let alone in the country, unless Matt Rule sprinkles some third-year magic on year 2. But as far as where he goes, I think you're looking for a team that felt a quarterback away, like maybe in Iowa. I think he'd fit in really well at Iowa, where maybe with Iowa's defense and they're getting a new offensive coordinator, maybe he steps in there and can be a 3,000 yard passer and just be more difficult to handle than whoever Iowa might bring back. So that's kind of where I'd be looking if he was going to stay in the college level, even away from going with his coach, but going for somewhere where he can go in and compete at a high level in a new offense.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I like the Mississippi State, and then also Iowa would be fun. Iowa, I can make fun of them all I want to for not scoring points this year, but at the end of the day, they had Caden McNamara. I think I've talked to both of you guys separately about that. So they had a different plan at quarterback. We'll say it that way to start out the season. If Caden McNamara would have helped them score a lot of points or not, who knows? But they had a different plan going into the season at quarterback, and everything changes after that. What about Oklahoma State though? Want to ask both of you guys. Basically, Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman. Let's say he doesn't come back. You've got Zane Flores on the roster, who's randomly enough, as we're talking about Nebraska, is the best prospect out of Nebraska. There he was recruited, and then you also have Garrett Rangel on the roster as well too, and then you have another quarterback coming in who would be a true freshman as well. With all that being said, it's hard for me to see Rangel staying around. I think he probably leaves unless he's going to get the quarterback nod. Who do you guys think would be the best at Oklahoma State, or a transfer? Just give you option D, transfer there as well. Jay, I'll ask you first here. I think maybe you've got the slightest opinion here, but maybe that's the toughest one here.
I did some a little bit of research, but you have a 3-star quarterback I think a 3.5-star quarterback come in with Smith. I'm not too sure how to say his first name, but OSU always has good finding talent in 3 and 4-star quarterbacks, and I think he just recently hard committed to OSU, like in November-ish, I think, and I really see him winning the quarterback battle between, Gundy's son and the 3rd-string quarterback that we got to see a little bit this year.
Yeah, I got to agree. I don't think Oklahoma State has Bobby Reed walking through the door, or for that matter, just an insane quarterback prospect is basically what I'm getting at here. But I would love to see a DJ Uiagalelei stay in Orange and just transfer, just go Orange and Clemson, Orange, Oregon State, Orange to Oklahoma State and see what's up. But I think, honestly, it's going to matter a lot on what Oklahoma State does offensively with the coordinator position. Does Casey Dunn just keep coming back? Does Oklahoma State try to do something different on offense? This past year, did something different on defense. Brought in a guy from, I know where, but it's not a D1 school in Brian Nardo. So, Brandon Nardo. So what's going to happen here with Oklahoma State? That would be my biggest question is, what are you going to do on the offensive staff? And then if you do have, Zane Flores on the roster and he is good, like, don't even worry about it. Just basically just bring him in. He's a 3-star. He's a highly rated 3-star quarterback. He's the second best player in Nebraska. And I mean, he should be good. Like, there's been a lot of hype around him. He's also a 6'3", 190-pound guy. So he's not like Rangel's build, where Rangel just looks so small out there on the field. It just looks like he's going to get crushed every single time too. So if I'm Oklahoma State, I'm hoping Flores is the guy. Just already have basically going on the roster here as well. All right, well, then let's pick some bowl games here, and I'm closing on out here. Trevor, Texas A&M going to beat Oklahoma State with a quarterback that's an interesting prospect here. That's that we haven't seen yet this year, right? I don't know much about A&M's quarterback group.
Yeah, I think he's come in a couple times. Max Johnson's, one of those quarterbacks that just seems to always have some issue. And I don't remember the backup's name, so I apologize. But I do think A&M wins. Ultimately, it's a deep team. It's a really, really talented team. Even with certain players entering the transfer portal before the game, knock Jimbo Fisher all you want. He knew how to get really, really talented players to College Station. And I think it'll be a good game. It'll probably be a high scoring game, which does kind of play into the favor of Oklahoma State a little bit more than Texas A&M. But I think, it's going to be that same one special teams play, a blocked field goal, kickoff return for a touchdown, something like that. That's going to give the Aggies a bowl game.
Well, I'm of course super biased, but at the same point, if you got a new quarterback coming in, I'm going to pick Oklahoma State and Alan Bowman. As long as Oklahoma State has a lot of players playing the bowl game, which Gundy in his press conference today said, I expect a lot of guys to play, then I'm going to pick Oklahoma State to win. And I also think it'll be a lot of fun. Just maybe Oklahoma State then throws everything at the wall and just goes, let's just show everyone every single possible fun play we can have and see if it works, because basically that Texas game was just such a bad note to end on. You want to do something a little bit more fun to end out the season. So I'll pick Oklahoma State as well here too. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I did not follow much on A&M, to be honest. So, and, just looking at records and, where they ended up, I just had to go with OSU. Gundy's going to Gundy sometimes. And, it's somehow he pulled out a 9-win season, and wouldn't hurt to see him put 10 up there. So
another 10-win season for Gundy after skipping a year. So it's almost something you can count on. Not yet, though. All right. But Jay, I'll just come right back to you here. OU versus Arizona. It should be a fun game. You got two top 15 teams going up against each other. And, of course, you got Jackson Arnold being in the spotlight here, as assuming he's a starting quarterback, of course, which I don't know why not. So who you got, OU or Arizona?
Oh, I highly believe in Jackson Arnold. I have OU going all the way. I don't even think it'll be a close game, to be honest. I think it's going to be like 35-14.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I kind of knew that was coming. I'm not gonna say it any other way. Trevor, what about you? You got OU or Arizona, or have you been following enough to know either heads or tails from this?
I've been watching a little bit, but Jay's right. Oklahoma's a deeper team. They're a faster team. They're a stronger team. I think the first half is going to be close, probably closer than Jay wants. But in the second half, I think the talent depth, and unless of course Jackson Arnold just plays out of his mind for 4 quarters and then he transfers out to USC or something like that.
Don't say that, man.
to go get his Heisman odds up there. But no, I don't think that's going to happen. But if he plays well, there's no reason Arizona should even be really competitive in this game.
Well, if you guys are betting fans, then I would go put some money then on OU to cover, because currently Arizona's favored by 3.5 here. and the over-under is 62.5. So
go put $5 on it right now.
Yeah, you can go put $5 on it and make a couple bucks back. I mean, Alamo Dome, why would OU lose to Arizona? I have not been a big proponent of Arizona this whole season. I don't think they've played a great schedule, and I don't think they're that great, honestly, overall. Listen, they've got 9 wins, but their non-conference wins are against Northern Arizona and UTEP. They lost a non-conference game against Mississippi State, which is an SEC team. I'm not going to knock them for. But then, I mean, the games that Arizona has won are really tough to just try to put into context here, at least for me as a Big 12 fan, because, okay, you beat Utah at home by a lot. I think Utah's decent. You beat UCLA at home by 17, but I don't think UCLA had their starting quarterback. Beat Oregon State by 3. Like, Arizona just killed Washington State, 44-6. But with that being said, you lost to Washington and to USC, which at the time you play them, they both were ranked top 10 in the country. And, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to, when in doubt, you choose the team you've seen more often, I guess, would be my point of view. And I'm going to choose OU, sadly. I'm not like happy about it. I'm not overjoyed, but I also don't want to be wrong. You know, and I think OU probably is good enough to score a lot. It would be the thing. You know, I mean, that's the main point. Like, Arizona, look, they put up 44 against a Pac-12 team. They put up 59 against Arizona State to end out the season, but like, maybe Arizona has some transfers or something happens as well too, and they're not bringing everyone. And all of a sudden, the line switches to be OU 3.5 as well, minus 3.5. So, who knows? Well, am I forgetting anything at all as we kind of wrap this one up on the podcast here? I'm going to say it this way: got to thunder up. Oklahoma State's football season's over, and I mean, you know what? The bowl game will be fun. You know what? Hopefully A&M will at least make it a game. Sorry for everyone this past weekend for not necessarily doing so. But hey, Toledo, they ended up winning. So it was fun to watch on multi-view on YouTube TV. And then the other thing I'd say too here is that we've got a fun college basketball schedule and a season Big 12 at least ahead of us. For Oklahoma State, who knows? Could be fun. But Trevor, any final thoughts from you here? Nebraska, A&M. I know you live in Miami. What other big news in the world? The Dolphins going to win it all?
I hope not. I hope so, because I want to go to the parade and kind of have that experience. But unfortunately, I think that is not going to happen.
All right. Well, who's your last thing we'll end on here? Trevor, who's your pick to win the whole college football playoffs?
Given me with my picks being Michigan, Texas, I'm gonna say Texas.
All right, Jay, what about you?
I think Bama gets their revenge against Texas in the finals.
I think Bama wins as well. So, all right, with all that being said, please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram for more, and we'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.